Hi everyone, today I'm going to be talking about the VR Commodore. The brochure I'm featuring is the VR Series 2. I will also talk about the Series 1. The VR Commodore was the first major redesign of the VNVP shape, and Holden had a major emphasis on safety. The VR Commodore was initially released in July 1993. The one pictured here is the VR Acclaim. It has the swirly hubcaps. The front end was completely restyled, including new guards, bonnet, bumper, grille, lights, and badge work. The front wheel arches were now slightly flared, and the rear wheel arches had a major revision. Instead of the squared VNVP wheel arches, they were now curved. Carried over from the VNVP were the 4 doors and windows, front windscreen, and the roof line. The Opera House window, which is above the rear wheel arch, was flared upwards to accommodate the higher boot line, and the rear windscreen was also an inch or two shorter. The Series 2 update had inserts in the twin nostril grille and a small Series 2 badge on the guard. This is from the Series 1 brochure. You can see the twin nostrils are larger without the inserts. Holden used the twin nostril design all the way up to VX. Apparently the twin nostril grille was inspired by the FJ Holden. The Series 2 Executive got a new red garnish, which replaced the Series 1's MX grey garnish seen here. There are many online debates about the colour of the reflectors on the VR-VS model. I can guarantee you these did not come out this way. They are faded, but many suggest otherwise. I challenge the keyboard warriors to find where this was an option in the option list, or show me in a brand new brochure. A new key design was the feature of the VR Commodore. It combined the remote and the key, and it was also able to charge the battery while in the ignition. This key design became very familiar to Commodore. The VS did revise the outer casing with the new VS emblem, but that design carried on all the way until VZ. Although the outer door mirrors look the same as VNVP, on the Series 2 VR the passenger's side mirror was convex for greater visibility. The VR was the first Commodore to have a fully adjustable steering column. Series 2 received a new revision mirror. It was wider, it was attached to the windscreen, and was the first complete new design since the original 1978 VB. The Series 2 VR now featured twin-jet windscreen washers. Another first on release of the VR was the rear lap sash center seat belt on the sedan only. Another VR Series 2 feature that most associate with the VS is the speed alert, which also chimes for handbrake on and low fuel. Speed alert was not fitted to the VR Ute or the more premium models like Berliner and Calais, as they already had that incorporated into the trip computer. The automatic transmission now had economy and power modes. On release of the VR, it received new front seat belts. Seatbelt webbing clamps were standard on the front seats. On the inside, the interior changes were minimal. You did get your speed alert, your new revision mirror, and for the Executive, there was a new cloth material compared to the Series 1 that's shown here. On the Series 1, near the vents, you can see where the speed alert would be located. This is Holden's last all-new steering wheel, not designed to fit an airbag. For the VS, they moved to the airbag designed steering wheel for all models, even when the airbag was not fitted. Here we have the VR Acclaim. The VR Acclaim was added to the model lineup right at the end of VR development. In fact, the VR swirly hubcaps were actually meant to feature on the VR Berliner. The VR Acclaim came standard with ABS brakes, independent rear suspension, and Australia's first locally produced driver's airbag. The Acclaim also came standard with cruise control and the option of power windows. To differentiate the Acclaim on the exterior compared to the Executive, you have the different hubcaps, different door molds, bumper inserts. The rear tail lights were clear like the Calais. It also had a clear center garnish, and the mirrors were color-coded. The wagons followed a similar story. However, the rear of the wagon did not get many styling revisions. It still featured the straight wheel arch of the VNVP. The side bumpers were slightly revised, and there was some new badge work. The VR Ute has a separate brochure. but it also followed the same formula as the wagon, with no changes to the rear end. This is the interior view of the VR Berliner. It does showcase the difference between the VN and VP. The bottom half of the dash is fundamentally unchanged. They did revise the fuse cover because of the adjustable steering column. This Berliner has the optional airbag. The Berliners came standard with trip computer and climate control air conditioning. Berliner didn't get ABS as standard or independent rear suspension, but it was optional. It also had power windows and pretty much was at the same spec as the previous VP Calais with a less plush interior. Initially, the VR Acclaim hubcaps, the swirlies, were meant to be on the VR Berliner, but the VR Acclaim was added to the product lineup right at the end. Holden must have went looking for some wheels, and they decided to recycle the VN Lexan GLI wheels, which were the equivalent of the VN Calais wheels for the Lexan at the time. Commodore was standard across the range with the exception of the Ute. For the Executive, SS, and Acclaim, the graphics were revised, but for the Berliner and Calais, it was a very familiar package that dates back to the VN Calais. Let's talk about the king and queen of the VR series, the S and the SS. The S was powered by the 3.8 litre V6 that we come to know from the VN and VP. Holden engineers were quite proud of the refinements they made in the VR. It had an extra 3 kilowatts. It was up from 127 kilowatts to 130 kilowatts at 4.8, and the torque for the V6 was 295 newton meters at 3.2. The Commodore S had a full body kit, which was shared with the SS, with the exception of the rear spoiler. Both S and SS had red grille inserts. The S had the wheels carried over from the VP S-Pack Series 2, which originally belonged to the VNSS. For the SS, you had a chunkier rear spoiler, new unique designed 15x7 alloy wheels, more contoured sports seats. The SS also had integrated fog lights on the front bar. Both S and SS had a color-coded garnish, and they also shared the Calais rear tail lights. For the SS, you had the standard V8 5-litre with 165 kilowatts at 4.4. It had 385 newton meters at 3.6. There was also the optional 185 kilowatt V8, which was produced a little bit higher at 4.6 and 400 newton meters at 3.8, which was used in the HSV. ABS brakes and independent rear suspension were standard on the SS. They were optional on the Commodore S, as was the airbag for both models. The next 2 pages cover off finance options, fuel options, warranty, Holden special vehicles, and Holden Wise parts. This page has the color chart, and there was a new addition, Genesis Blue, which most people associate with the VS. For release of the Series 2 VR, Holden had spent a lot of money on paint facilities. All VR Series 2s were now painted in 2-pack instead of acrylic of the previous models. There's also some accessories to personalize your VR, and the page on the right is all the engine specifications for the V6 and V8. These 2 pages cover off your standard features and any options for the Series 2 range. At the time, the VR was the most awarded Australian car in history. It did sell quite well with 165,262 cars sold. The VR was produced until April 1995. When the EF Falcon was released in August 1994, there were some months where the Falcon outsold the VR only marginally. The new EF Falcon had 157 kilowatts compared to the VR's 130. Once the VS was released, they closed the gap with the Ecotec V6. It produced 147 kilowatts, 10 less than the Falcon, and they regained their top sales position. On the last page, it's interesting to note that all the marketing at the time for the VR Series 2 had the brand new VS emblem. Well, we call it the VS emblem, but marketing was already using it for the VR. To finish up, I've added in an advertisement for the Commodore Equip, which was basically the run-out model at the end of the line for the VR.